Okay, so I wanted to start off with a clear working definition of culture and competence. For the purposes of this podcast, I'm defining culture as the cumulative deposit of knowledge, which can include beliefs, religion, cuisine, music, habits, etc. And all of those things are how you define your own personal culture. For example, I say I'm raised in an Irish atheist American culture. Then competence, the quality of being competent. So bringing it back to cultural competence. I define cultural competence as the integration and transformation of knowledge about individuals and groups of people across cultural lines. So why is this definition important and why should you care? America does not live in a white bubble. This country truly is a melting pot of cultures and people are not embracing it. Cultural competence is a lifelong skill that can be used for building relationships, raising children, and creating an inclusive environment. If we can instill this quality in today's youth early in development, we may be able to reduce prejudices and increase cultural competence. Cultural competence is a loaded topic, and I, being a white female, needed some help navigating it. I called my friend Jana. Jana lives in a suburb of Chicago called Oak Park. Her high school consists of about 60% white, 30% black, and then 10% in other Latino students. Jana was raised by two different race parents and was kind enough to accept my call.
I identify as biracial, so usually I tell people I'm black and white.
So how did your parents try to incorporate culture into your life, if they did?
Culturally, I think that, I don't know if it was it was never we, I don't know, did African drumming or something, just because that's not what my dad would think is cultural, because he's kind of I'm an African American, he doesn't identify with an African culture really. But I think it was just important to see the two sides from where you come from, and that was very important to them, showing that you're half white and you're half black, and these are all the people you come from, not just here is dad's side, and then you also have your white grandparents. But it's just kind of it was really registering with you that you have two sets of everything, and that they may be different colors, but that's just makes you you.
A little later in the conversation, I asked Jana about a time when she experienced cultural incompetence. Her answer really shocked me.
I think one of the hardest things is that being half white and half black, you get it kind of from both sides. That's what a lot of people think is that a lot white people will be oh, well, you're not really black, so it doesn't really matter, and that has affected me a lot, kind of dealing with comments like that and racist jokes. But then you also get it from the black side of things, where people kind of don't they don't outright say racist things, but it's more just kind of body gestures and facial expressions, how you can kind of see that they're not fully accepting you.
Wow. What is going on in today's youth that just makes them so ignorant? You can point fingers at a lot of things and people, but I'm going to point towards the parents for a second. I think that when you are raising a kid who is the same race as yourself, you can end up on autopilot when navigating culture and race topics. There are so many things going on when raising a kid that I think parents are not talking to their kids about cultural competence. The end result of this are kids who don't think. They don't think about cultural differences and how that influence people. And then they make snap judgment or exclusive, like the situation Jana was in when entering high school.
And that's always been kind of rough, because it's you always feel you're kind of in the middle, which is what you are, but it's hard feeling that way, because it's you feel you can't, most of my friends have been white, and it's not because of I prefer white people, it's just because that's the people I click with, but it's just dealing with black people kind of being oh, well, her opinions don't really count, and it's just kind of whatever, yeah, she can talk about black rights, but we don't really count that, and it's just kind of it's hard dealing with that, and especially going through high school, that was probably one of roughest times for racial incompetence.
If Jana is experiencing incompetence from high schoolers, then there's clearly a problem with the way culture is being discussed at home and at school. I think that all parents should talk to their kids about respecting other people's cultures and then recognizing the differences in people and then respectfully inquiring about their culture. Because only then will we be able to truly understand each other and paint a full picture of where each of us come from. From that understanding each other's culture, cultural competence will slowly be able to grow to create a more harmonious society.
I'm Josie Albert. I'm an IGS teacher at New Trier Township High School. It's my first year here.
Josie is in a committed relationship with her lifelong partner, who she is also raising 2 kids with. Their names are Brandon and Amelia. Both Josie and her wife are white.
They are lovely, and they are both African American. Brandon is African American, and Amelia is African American and Vietnamese. Cool. So we have a unique transracial 2-mom family.
I sat down with Josie, and the conversation immediately is focused around her kids. 2 white parents raising African American kids just seemed so complicated. I asked her if her kids had already experienced racial or cultural incompetence, even though they were both under the age of 10 years old.
So yes, my 7-year-old recently said to me, "Mom, did you know that some people don't like people that have brown skin just because they have brown skin?" And I said, "Unfortunately, buddy, I know that happens." And he's like, "But Mom, I'm brown." And he was, he couldn't believe that there would be people that wouldn't like him just because he had brown skin. And that is a heartbreaking thing, but it's a truth for him, and he's 7.
That story breaks my heart every time I hear it. How awful is that? This little boy is 10 years old and is already facing adversity amongst his peers at school, which is where he brought home the story. It's terrible how prevalent the problem has to be in order for a kid to pick up on it. I think that if I were Brandon, I would be really confused on why I was being treated differently. It must be so confusing to just a 10-year-old on why this is happening. Because you were adopting different race kids, were there different things you needed to do in order to qualify?
They recommended getting a cultural consultant, and I'm like, what? Are they paid? Who is that? And it doesn't mean anything like that. It means that you have a friend or you have somebody that represents people of color in your life. And I've been lucky enough to work with people, and I have made friends through the kids' schools who are my cultural consultants. I've made friends here already, and I've asked about, hey, what is it called? What's that haircut called that I need to give my son? I don't know what to call it when I go to the barber. So I ask people here.
Although cultural consultant sounds like an intimidating term, at least to me, their real purpose is to just be a figure in your child and your life. They are there to help with questions from traditions to haircuts and everything in between. Cultural consultants are pretty neat actually, especially for families like Josie's. They allow for the kids to have role models with the same color skin, and they can also bring some unique or traditional culture in their life, which can help assist in self-identification. I remember a time when people were culturally incompetent towards me. I was at summer camp in Fremont, Michigan. My cab and I were sitting on the beach with my counselors when they asked us all where we were from. I was the only white kid in my cabin that session, and everyone else was African American and or from Evanston or the city. I proudly announced that I was from Winnetka, and everyone just went silent. My counselors said, "Oh, you don't act like a Winnetka kid," or "Oh, you don't dress like one." All the other campers kind of frowned at me, like I was this foreign specimen. I could feel the cold stares of my cabin mates as they started to stereotype me. They said that their parents complained about the North Shore all the time. It was like I had flipped a switch and all of them had created these huge prejudices against me in 30 seconds. In Winnetka, not everyone is a snotty rich kid. There are some, but everyone is different here. Everyone has grown up differently, and I had just been lumped in with everyone else, and it felt really sucky. I think the importance of cultural competence speaks for itself. The goals of cultural competence is to create an inclusive environment where everyone feels welcome. We're reflecting back on Jana. She said she felt ignored by 2 races and struggled to fit in. While Josie's kids are still young and are beginning to see cultural incompetence for themselves. As they grow up, it will be important for them to create welcoming environments for the Janas of the world to feel included. There are so many more different races and people in the world that if you just try to get to know one person's culture really well every day, we can begin to start a more accepting society.